Well, welcome to another episode of Victorious Friday. I'm here with Jennifer. Exciting time. We've just been kind of reminiscing about some time. She lives in Iowa. She'll be talking about. I was just reminiscing with her that some of the best beef I've ever tasted came from Iowa when I was back as a territory manager with Johnson and Johnson. So I'm excited about this call. You're going to find Jennifer to be extremely exciting. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. Well, tell us about yourself. Give us a little background. Tell us what you do. Just kind of give us a quick download of your background and what you do and who you are.
I'm a wife and mother of two young children. We just happen to be having our children in our midlife. And so we welcomed our children while we were knocking on the door of 40 years old. And I started a business 3 years ago after spending my entire career in sales for nearly 20 years. So we've had a lot of transitions in life, and we're just enjoying the middle of the Midwest.
Well, I tell you, our audience is going to be extremely exciting to hear your message today because many, as you know, women are going into the marketplace. And in fact, I was just looking at some stats. Back in 2006, there was around 6 CEOs that made up Fortune 500 companies. Today, there are 38 to 39 women CEOs. And so the year of the woman is certainly coming forth. I think you'll agree, and I will agree, that there's still opportunity in that area. Unfortunately, when I look on the other side of things from an ethnic standpoint, African Americans were also 6 CEOs in 2006, but we've gone in the opposite direction. There's now 2 African American CEOs in corporate America. So if you think your plight has been challenging, just think about the other side of that. But with that being said, many moms, as well as my daughter, who's in corporate America, who's moving through the corporate ladder, and now first time mom, she's asking the question, how do I maneuver all of this? How do I balance it? And I know you have an interesting response. Well, I don't know if you can balance this at all, but how are you balancing it? What do you do to kind of make it all go, not as crazy as it probably is anyway?
Prayer. Lots and lots of prayer.
Lots of prayer.
Oh my goodness. Every day feels like there's just another burden laid on top of our shoulders. My husband's a dad, so I've, for the most part, been the primary wage earner for our family, which when we made that decision before our daughter 5 years ago, it was one we didn't make lightly. It wasn't like my husband said, well, since you make this money and have this career, you're going to be the one working. We spent time in 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, and what does it mean to have your household in good order? And what does it mean to have, my husband home and have our kids have access to their dad? And it's been a journey because, as you know, those are roles that God didn't design us necessarily to be as our first and primary skill. And so we constantly have to support each other. I have to add a lot of support to my husband's day-to-day and still maintain some of the household balance. He doesn't cook, unfortunately. So I get done working every day and I go downstairs and love up on the kids and then make a meal. We still have to do life and to be a mom and a business owner, and it becomes a challenge. It's not anything that I can simplify to anything other than day by day.
What type of pressures did that put on the marriage?
We definitely were on the same page. That's the good news. And as much as people that know me can at times describe me as alpha female, right? I'm just the chaser, and that my husband is just submissive to my choices and my directive. And it's actually completely opposite. Back in our home, my husband is the one who I follow his lead. And so I ask for taking often. If he's my pride reset button, he is my best fan, my biggest fan and my best fit. But he also can be the one to say, hey, you need to rein this back. Yeah. We want our I want my wife back. The kids want their mom back. You're getting, sucked in or distracted. And so I'm grateful that he is a bit of my reset button.
Mhm.
And we've also realized that he's got he can harbor a lot of his feelings, and it can bubble out. And so we've learned what each other's triggers are a
Yeah,
little bit. So
yeah,
hopefully we don't get to that bubble over place too often.
yeah, yeah. And your young ones, what age group?
We have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So still
Well,
preschool, still
yeah.
preschool.
Well, that's enough to keep you busy. You know,
It
when you
is.
think about raising in the 2020 era,
Mm,
a 5-year old, and what you said, 3-year old,
yep.
a 3-year old,
Yep.
how is it different, in your opinion, from when you were growing up? And what challenges and what tensions are you facing?
My 5-year-old was sitting at the table the other day, and she was just being silly. And she was coloring a picture of a princess and just pretty dresses, and she's very frilly and everything's sparkly. And she's just like, and my son was sitting there, and she said to him, "You're going to marry a pretty, pretty princess just like someday, and I'm going to marry a handsome prince just like you someday." And then she started laughing, and she was like, "Mommy, wouldn't it be funny if a boy married a boy and a girl married a girl?" And I stopped in my tracks because I know I want to address that. I know I want her to know, how we feel about that as a family and how much we love those people, even though they make a decision different than our family. But I just paused. I froze. I didn't know what words to use. I didn't know how to respond to it. And we kind of just ignored it. We didn't address it immediately, and not from a position that she would even understand that we ignored it. We just changed the subject, and it came up about a week later. And I just don't know if I was prepared to have that heavy of a life conversation with a 5-year-old.
Mhm.
And she came to it all on her own. And I anticipate that life is going to be filled with a lot of really challenging conversations far earlier than I ever was as a child, and probably things my parents wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole, even if they should have.
Yeah. When you think
Just
about
challenging
that,
times.
it is a challenging times. There are certainly issues and topics today that, I don't think we probably had to deal with different topics. Kind of,
Hmm.
that was probably our parents was probably thinking, "Oh my God, where did they get that from?"
Yep.
Versus what we're dealing with today, it's like a new topic. But there seems to be huge challenges with, i.e., social media, i.e., technology, i.e., topics like same-sex marriage and things like that, that a 5-year-old kid is dealing with, right? I mean,
Mm.
I was thinking about, going outside, playing baseball or doing something, t-ball or running up
Yep.
and playing something at 5 years old. I don't think I was thinking about that in that way. Things have certainly changed, and I think technology has brought the world inside of the four walls of our homes and outside of the four walls of our home in a different way. Is there a way that you kind of, I don't know if manage is the right word, but is there a way that you kind of oversee and watch what they're doing on social media? Any words of advice for young parents coming up, and
Mm.
they have this thing called the iPhone and the iPad and all of these type of
Oh my
devices.
goodness.
Do you manage
We're
that
that
effectively?
parent. We're the parent that doesn't even have an iPad to pass to our kids. We, of course, have our smartphones, and we look at each other constantly and think, I don't know how we're going to handle when they challenge and push back. Is that going to happen at 8 instead of what was 10? And I would have thought I never would have put a cell phone in the hands of anybody less than 16. I didn't have a cell phone till I was in college. I didn't have internet till I was in college. I'm
Yeah,
dating myself.
yeah,
And I don't know how we're going to address it. We also are just challenged by sports and
Oh,
all the little
yes.
activities that we could put 3 and 5-year-old in. And we feel like we really want to cherish the time that we have with our kids and not be a lot of that spare time bouncing around to different activities. But we also don't want to socially deprive them from all of
Right.
that interaction and the fun and enjoyment that they have with friends. And so we still haven't made a decision on whether to put her in dance or to
Mhm.
start soccer or any little fun activity things. And I think we might err on the side of delaying some of those decisions and waiting for them to prompt them to us
Mhm.
instead of us those kind of opportunities in front of them prematurely. And some friends that are already at that stage and age with their teenagers, and I feel this, they have a screen time limit, and it really is I say control not from a negative what apps their kids have access to, but
Mhm.
they've realized that texting affects their screen time. So guess what they have to do to talk to their friends? Good old pick up the phone does not towards screen time, which means these kids can actually have a conversation with their friends. And of course, there's parameters around not having 2.5 hour long conversations with the cord wrapped around into the closet like I might have done when I was a young kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Make sure that cord is long
but
enough too, you know.
yeah, you know it, right? I'm talking about the around the corner into the
Yeah,
closet. It was the
yeah,
best you could do. So
yeah. It's
yeah, I
so
think
funny.
that maybe just being intentional
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being proactive with some of those conversations. And we're already having in our house, we don't have our phones at the dinner table or when anybody's sharing a meal. We're going to dedicate that time to conversation. And that's even something my husband and I have to stop. He's like, I want to send this one text, or I want to respond to this one message, or this email came in, or I'm selling this thing on Marketplace, and how quickly we know that they're picking up on that and they're going to use our actions against us someday. I guarantee it.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, we grew up in that era, We grew up with the phone. You kind of have to dial, and you pay for about a minute, Now we all dating
Yep.
ourselves. And yeah, I remember, dad and mom tried to put a lock on the phone. Most young people like, what is he talking about? They tried to put a lock on the phone so you couldn't turn it. And we found a way, kind of bend back the little metal thing so we could kind of
Oh,
turn it and get the operator. If you got the operator, you could make a call. But it's kind of
that's
hilarious if you get
fantastic.
the line and go. But it was some fun times, right? It was simpler times,
Hmm.
seemed like. Obviously, technology was not anywhere near is today, but we
Mm-mm.
had other things we could get into. But you know, at the best, we go down to the park and have some fun as long as we get home before the light goes down, the
Yeah.
sunset. We're in good shape. But when I think about 2020, you mentioned something I want to get back to. We live in an age, they say, and I'm not sure if it's there, but I think it is, where they're saying 72%, the church has less influence than it did probably when we were growing up, to the tune of somewhere in the neighborhood of 72%. Um, what would you say? Are you seeing this type of lack of influence, lack of leadership? Where are you seeing the church playing a
Mm.
role in the upbringing of your children versus what you guys are doing in the home? Because here at Victoria's Family, we advocate that it really needs to start in the home and be supported by the church. And I'm a huge church advocate. I'm an elder in the church, so I'm promoting the church here. I think there's significance, but I also think we have to start in the home and start setting those biblical principles
Mm.
very early age in the home and let it be supported and reinforced in the church. What say you as you bring up two young children?
So, to no fault of my parents, I was raised in a pretty rigid denomination. And the prayers that were in our household were, "Come, Lord Jesus, be our guest," and "Now I lay me down to sleep," and the Lord's Prayer. And they did leave a lot of the detailed piece of faith building to the church to catechism, Sunday school. And the trouble with that is I never let that faith become my own faith. The seeds were planted, mind you, and there was a relationship with Jesus, but I had not turned my life over. You're a selfish little teenager and you run off into the real world and you make your own choices. And I remember my mom was a fierce advocate and a prayer warrior for me. And she used to call me on Sundays and we'd catch up on the life of the week if we hadn't talked. And she would always be like, "Did you go to church today?" And I'd always be like, "Mom, I waited tables and worked until 2:30 in the morning. It wasn't going to happen." And so every week it would be somewhat of a different thing. And out in my late 20s, I started to rekindle my relationship with Jesus. And it wasn't until after I met my husband and we kind of went through some of that process that I didn't know that the New Testament was a bunch of books that were actually based on letters from Jesus's real followers and what an apostle really was. And I thought I understood the Gospels, and like my mind was blown. And these now seem like simple things to understand about the Bible. I never understood the prophetic connection between Old Testament to New Testament, right? And in this super, denominationally rigid space, there was a liturgical calendar. And so there was pieces of the Bible that I had never been exposed to, had never read, had never fathomed or understood. And I had Sunday school understanding of Bible stories. And when my husband and I went through this crazy sanctification process and we were soaking in the word and having all these ahas, I remember going to my small group and I was like, there should be this awesome vocabulary that's teaching people righteousness and sanctification and redeemed. And like, I just, all of these beautiful words, I just was so enamored by, right? Even grace and mercy. Did I even understand those to be true for their real meaning? And my husband and I agreed that we wanted to be able to have our kids in a place where they saw that played out and lived versus taught. But I also am a huge believer in community. So I had some friends who very much, we got into this discussion in the group about that's what school's for, right? That's what church is for. And to each their own choice, but we really want to bring that back into the home and use church for expository preaching. I want our kids to see a book of the Bible worked through front to finish when they get there, to actually sit down in sermons. They're so young, right? But I also want it to be relationship and surrounding themselves around other people who can admonish their choices. I want my kids to know that they can go to another trusted adult with their problems because they more than likely are not going to come to us with everything. So the circle that we surround them with and the other children that can live life with them, the more that the way that we raise them can be reinforced. So we want our church family life with us to also be able to admonish us in our marriage, but admonish our children along their journey as well. That's how I feel the church can play a big role.
Well, it's fantastic. When I think about what you do, and I'm going to jump into that arena, a lot of the disciplines, a lot of the skills, a lot of the things that you do actually can apply in this setting, right? We work with parents, and our scripture verse is around Ephesians 6:4. It talks about fathers really speaking to parents. It talks about don't exasperate your children, don't frustrate them, which sometimes I get an A in, but it says, but to train and instruct them in the Lord. And when you talked about it in the sense of you want to teach them prayer, you want to teach them how to read God's word, you want to teach them those disciplines of worship, etc., those disciplines of community. Those are all disciplines that the church is bringing forth and training and instructing. But the word was loosely tossed around these days. It's really discipleship. Training and instruction is really discipleship. And discipleship is, in the way I describe it, is one person imparting their life into another's life, so that God's word can be edified and within them, and they begin to have a personal experience with the Father, because you can't give them that. Only they can have that with Him.
Yeah.
So what's so amazing about it is, in a lot of ways, you do that with leaders in businesses because you're imparting your learning, your knowledge, empowering them. Tell us a little bit about what you do, your company, what you do, and why, how did you come about doing
Huh. How much time you got? No. Uh,
it?
the name of my business is Simpson Sales Solutions, and I have a couple of different legs to my organization, but one of God's natural gifts to me is that ability to have keen intuition. And one of my sales superpowers is asking really good questions to get people to reveal things that I either assume or have observed to be true. They just don't know them yet or haven't told me about them yet, which means my product or service hasn't been able to be teed up to sell to them yet. And so I go into organizations and either use my intuition and discovery sales ability to ask really good questions to find what might be broken, missing, or needs reinforced. And I can do that at a corporate level. I also can take and use my abilities to observe the sales systems that have been successful for business owners that are looking to put sales biz dev responsibility role into somebody else. And maybe they even have to build a sales team, but they just can't quite replicate their superpowers. I like to sit side seat with business owners and identify those superpowers, then build a system that teaches, equips, and empowers other people to go off and to drive revenue for that company. So the business owner can move in different directions to help scale the company instead of being responsible for sales. Or I get direct access to salespeople, and I've been there, done that. The Empowermentor, the mentor side of what I do is I've been there and done that, right? I know what it feels like to not really want to admit your true weaknesses to your management, or to pressure of pipeline responsibility or providing for a fee, and still wanting to chase and achieve and to take care of your clients in the battle of all of that. And if I can get people to truly open up to me about the emotional side of sales, we can really get the center of the skills that are more tactical in their sales job that can get strengthened to make them produce and perform, but just for their bottom line, but for their personal happiness. Because I've also battled just the pressures of the sales profession. And I feel like they just need a resource and a peer
Yeah,
to talk to.
yeah.
And the managers I consult with need to know a salesperson's perspective. They may or may not be out of
Yeah,
touch with what it's like to actually be on the
yeah.
front lines.
No, that's so good. Now I'm gonna throw this huge challenge to you because I want you to take what you do on a day-to-day basis and all those skills and principles and finding those superpowers. And I want you to bring that back to the home. What are those principles that could apply that you do every day in the marketplace that you can actually use in the home as a parent? That's a challenge, right?
Listening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How much I empower patients, right?
Mhm.
To listen to my clients and my customers,
Yeah.
to not have to have a filter to
Mhm.
what they're saying to me. When you
Mhm.
come home and
Mhm.
I have a filter when my husband gets defensive, or have a filter when our kids get combative. And I don't necessarily always have that with customers. What I have realized is I love to ask questions of my customers. And so I've gotten to a place where I love asking questions of our kids. And a lot of the times just sitting in bed late at night when we really wanted them to be asleep by 9, and our daughter just wants to chitty chat and it's 9:45, and instead of just shushing her to go to bed because she wants to ask just one more question, mommy, I decide it's best to just sit and be in that space and talk to her and answer her questions and be with her. She might need to be woken up in the morning and she might be grumpy and might need a nap, but I want to capture that time when she wants
Mhm.
to get into a lot of those topics. And I'll ask questions like, what about today made you happy?
Mhm.
What about today made you sad? And
Mhm.
what made you frustrated or anxious or worried, or
Mhm.
all the emotions throughout the day. And then we use that as the basis for our prayers.
Yeah.
So what we're grateful for and what was happy, we get to say, thanks God, that's a great day. And as simple as we got to walk the neighbor's dog, and thanks God that we get to be outside and enjoy your creation and the animals, and that we have some of that freedom and extra time to be generous to our neighbors. So that has been fun
Yeah.
to do with our kids. Ask questions,
Yeah.
listen, and then make them
Yeah.
recognize sort of what the mundane day to day is,
That's
and how
good.
much God's involved in the mundane.
Mhm.
Yeah. Helps me stop and slow down too, because we'll sit in a circle sometimes in bed and pray, and I'll be like, Daddy, what about today made you happy? And then he'll turn around and be like, so Mommy, what about today made you mad? And
That's good.
we have to admit it. We have
Yeah. Yeah.
to lay it out in front of our kids so they see
Yeah.
us being more authentic too.
So superpower number one, parents, is listening.
Mm.
I also heard ask the right questions and be willing and have the patience to listen, hear, and really attentively listening, right? Let's see, can I pull out of you a superpower number two?
Mm. Superpower number two, time, and the one-on-one, and being able to take my son out for a mommy donut date, or take my daughter one-on-one for Happy Meal memories, and just giving them time and attention, uninterrupted time and attention, because often they get what's left over after a work day. I'm exhausted. I've given all of my energy and excitement and smiles to other people, and I just want to put my head down and make dinner and do the dishes and get some laundry done and be productive. I have an itty bitty bit of perfectionism in my
Just an itty
wiring,
bit.
and so just an itty bit, which is good in the workplace, not so fantastic when you
Yes.
come home to the disarray of toddler land. And so getting out of the house, going for a walk, getting in nature, and giving them one-on-one time is going to empower superpower number one,
Yeah.
listening and time for questions. And
Well, you had me when you said you're going to have these mommy and kid dates at the donut shop, right?
yep.
You can be my mom, okay? I mean, right now, if I had a perfect mom, you would be it, because you would be taking me out to the donut shop.
You
And
got it.
I tell I have grandkids now, and I tell my kids, they try to give me instructions as to what I can and cannot do, because I have a little bit of a sweet tooth, and they
Mhm.
don't have their kids on, sugar and candy and all this stuff. So I tell them, if you want the kid to hang out with me or whatever I'm doing, if they happen to pick up something that just on the table and it happens to be a donut or a cookie, etc., it's not my
Mhm.
fault.
Mhm.
It's their fault,
Mhm.
because you entrusted your kids with me, and you know my habits. And so, I've tried to do my best to abide by their wishes, but there are times where things hang around on the table, and kids
You know it.
certainly find it. I'm going to stretch it and go for superpower number three. We heard superpower number one is listening. Superpower number two, we talked about time and availability. And of
Mm.
course, it was really resonating with me because of the donut experience. So let's go to superpower number three. And this will be the
Mm.
last big superpower. There's many of them, but there's one more superpower I want to see if you pull out.
I have a feeling that you already know what you want it to be. That's what I have a feeling. Let me see here. Um, oh, you got me stumped. You got me stumped.
That's
What do you
okay.
think? What do you
So
think it
I'm
is?
gonna give you a superpower number three.
All right.
And in the
Maybe you see it. It's
marketplace, you
hard for
may
you to see it
no,
yourself.
but once I say it, you're gonna jump all over it. in the marketplace, you're probably talking about the values and the character and all of that in the business setting, right?
Yeah.
On the faith-based side, we talk about that superpower as being faith, as being relationship, right? And the relationship we have, one with our Father, and secondly, the relationship we have with one another. And what I heard you as you were speaking about your children relationship and husband and so forth, it may not be perfect. It may be far from perfect, but you're dedicating the time, you're making the commitment, you're being intentional
Mm.
in, making sure you at least recognize and prioritize. Not perfectly, but you're being intentional, right? And I think all our kids really want is to have a relationship with their parents where they can feel like this is home, right? This is a safe place.
Mm.
And by faith, I mean that but they're also trusting in something, in someone greater than you. See, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the big difference on the marketplace side and our side is, I've been in the marketplace for 38 years myself, in leadership for 30 of those 38 years. For me, it was always bigger than me, right? It was always about someone else. But this whole idea of values, and I'm going to just take it on this side of Victoria's family and talk about faith, is so critical that they understand what they believe, why they believe it, who they believe in, because they're going to get into these challenges and mom and dad will not be sufficient, but Christ will be. When you think
Yeah.
about that from a business perspective and trying to uncover, it doesn't have to be what I just said. If I
Mm-hmm.
love to get your thoughts on maybe a possible, I'm gonna try it one more time for superpower number 3. Anything come to mind?
So the truth lie space is
Mm-hmm.
one that internal conversation that you have with yourself,
Mm.
and the things that don't come out of your mouth that are still stuck in your heart.
Yeah.
And in the professional space, I like them to find that lie so that we can
Yeah.
replace it with the truth.
Yeah.
They might think that they are unsuccessful in a prospect, but they
Mm-hmm.
actually were just unsuccessful in identifying a magic client. If they
Yeah.
could find their magic client, then we can
Mm-hmm.
get them to want to meet with them so they can ask good questions and find the connection. And I had to go through a truth overhaul in my own life, realize how much was stuck in my own head. And even in January of this year, all I was gone, and I had to hit my knees and put my face on the floor, and I'm sobbing and just being like, God, this is your business, not mine. You're going to have to tell
Yeah.
me who and where to go and who you want me to help. And I want our kids to understand that I had a lot of shame-based language stuck in my
Mm.
head,
Mm.
and the language we now use with our kids, we're extremely intentional with stopping
Yeah.
ourselves when we
Yeah.
get to the, you should know better,
Yeah.
and if you only would have. And so I don't want to plant seeds of a truth lie battle in my kids, even though
Good.
when they turn
Good.
18 and head off to the house, I'm going to be like, maybe you should go through this program and unprogram you from everything that I might have done wrong. But I definitely think that we think the truth lie balance and trying to replace those lies with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Our daughter came home from preschool today. She's crying, she's sobbing, she ran into her room, and I came down and I was like, what's going on? Well, there was a little girl in the playground whose sister left recess because her class was done playing. And the little sister was just devastated that her big sister left, and I'm sure feeling some abandonment and other things. And my 5-year-old daughter went up and was like, well, I can be your sister and play with me. And she was doing everything that she could think of to try to help that little girl, but the little girl didn't want her help and kind of ran away from her and just wasn't done processing her emotions. And my daughter, being the little leader that she may or may not have inherited from me, wanted to fix and to help. But in my daughter's mind, what she felt was she doesn't want to play with me. Not that she didn't want to play with anybody. She wanted to play with her sister and hadn't processed how she was
Mm-hmm.
feeling about losing her sister. Nothing to do with you, sweetheart. and her wanting to play with you or not play with you. And then my daughter had to like push the issue. Well, how come she didn't think about my feelings? And so the little selfish 5-year-old, and just helping her talk that instead of letting all of that just sit in her head.
Yeah.
Because I know what happens when all of that sits in your head. And
yeah,
trying to get her to think of people's perspectives, to
yeah,
understand their emotions as well as her own. And we do a lot of like even role playing of, well, what's a better thing to say next time or next time? And I did say to her today, I was like, sweetheart, I don't want you to change how you acted. You were and you were loving her and you wanted to help her. That should never change. And you just can't control how they respond to your choice. You made a good choice. You had a heart to be helpful, and I don't want you to based on the fact receive your help today. She might receive your help another day.
That's powerful. What you just shared is very powerful. Our little ones are dealing with this every day, aren't they? They want to be affirmed. They want to be accepted. They want to be friends, right? And that's one of the challenges with this social media. You can't control some of that. I mean, people send things out that's very damaging, but they don't understand how damaging it could be. And we give them these devices, and this stuff goes viral like that. I mean, it's very quick. Jennifer, I tell you, you've been a real trooper in hanging in and giving us those 3 superpowers. I want to give you a moment as you just have been thinking and there's just things that's on your heart. I'd like for you to just look into that camera and tell us, as a working mom, loving wife, entrepreneur, parent of 5 and 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, what would you say to parents today? What would you say to working moms today? What would you say to those wives out there in a COVID world today? Just share let me just give you a few minutes just to share your heart, what's ever on your heart.
Stop being so hard on yourself and give that burden to God over and over and over and over again. Don't isolate. Don't keep it to yourself. Find friends in your life that you can unashamedly, unapologetically pour your heart and all of its messy, broken pieces on the table. And don't feel like you have to be everything to everybody. Be okay with boundaries, because you may need to put a bubble around yourself from time to time, and you may need to protect yourself from people that are sucking things out of you. And talk to your spouse about what's just going on in your head, but don't do it in the midst of the moment that caused the stressor. Wait until there's a time that you can have some one-on-one time when the kids are asleep or in bed, or grandma and grandpa or somebody has the kids, because being able to talk about it and to work through it is a healthy step. And you can't go it alone. And even if it is just you and God, you still can't go it alone. It takes a village to raise kids. It takes other people who love the Lord to pour into you and to pour into your children. And, it definitely takes vulnerability. But as a working mom, I beat myself up often, too often. And I just need that truth for myself. I even have to write it down sometimes, and I have a journal, and I'll write lies on one side, and sometimes it takes me forever to come up with the truth, as silly as it sounds, but man, I can fill that lie page so quick. So just write it down, because when you read those lies to yourself, they will sound absurd, I promise you. So get it out of your brain.
Well, that's fantastic. We've been blessed here today by Jennifer. Jennifer, I want to give you a moment here because the work that you do is phenomenal. Quickly tell us, if for those who want to kind of reach out to you and understand more of what you do, quickly tell us again what your business is and how can someone contact you if they want to reach out to learn more.
You bet. Pick up the phone. My personal cell phone is my work phone. You know, I'm approachable and accessible. My phone number
I don't
is
get the phone
513
number. Just give a URL. Give a
URL,
yeah.
simpsonsalessolutions.com. You can
Okay.
find me online. I will tell you that I am going to be starting what I call a mentor mind,
Okay.
which is my version of a mastermind, and it's going to be 12 weeks where we walk through that Q&A superpower that I'd mentioned, to be able to ask good questions and to identify the connection between your product and service and a customer's needs and desires. And I am seeking some beta testers. I'm going to have one salesperson per industry, so you will have industry exclusivity. And we're going to walk through the whole process over a 12-week period. And those beta participants in my mentor mind will be the launch pad for testimonials and case studies and referrals for the new project that I'm launching. So anybody out there that has sales as a profession, sales as a business ownership component, maybe you might want to join my mentor mind.
Oh, that would be exciting. One more time, give us that website.
You bet. simpsonsalessolutions.com.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up another session of Victorious Friday. I think we have walked away with some real words of wisdom. I'm thinking about these superpowers, and I'm thinking about how I can implement them in my own home and in my own life. And I pray that it's been a blessing for you. I pray that you be very intentional in implementing and thinking about these superpowers. And for those who are in sales and in that world, we also have a professional in Jennifer. She has been training and working with professionals in her field for many years. And we've been blessed. We've been blessed today, Jennifer, by your presence. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on this Victorious Friday.
Thank you, Terence, for your heart for helping families, for your desire to help parents and equip them with what they need to raise their children in a faith-filled home and to send them off into the big, bad, scary world with that relationship with Jesus. I think it's absolutely amazing and commendable, and I'm grateful to have gotten the chance to get to know you.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed day, and we'll be talking again soon.
You bet.